So Project Hail Mary's out, and it's pretty, I'd say it's pretty good. When I remember when the book first came out, I was slightly disappointed by it for reasons I'll get into in a little while, but you know, Andy Weir, I read The Martian, I think everybody's seen that film, and then I read Artemis. Loved The Martian, great book, pretty good, even maybe a great film, and then people don't like this one as much, so then he wrote Project Hail Mary, and it's just a really good book in terms of, you know, a page turner. Like, you talk about someone like Stephen King, you read a Stephen King book, maybe it's not the most philosophical book ever, but it's a very good, fun read. It goes fast, you know, quickly. The characters, the dialogue's fun, everything that happens. Andy Weir's got this little formula that he likes to use. But going back to the movie, you know, it's one of those movies that comes out and it doesn't really, I'm not gonna say it restores your faith in humanity, but it does kind of restore your faith in the Hollywood system, that Hollywood can still make a movie that's gonna be a fun adventure, emotional, make you laugh, make you cry, appeal to a wide audience, and it's science fiction, which, you know, that's my favorite genre of film. If you haven't figured that out already, I love science fiction because you can do anything with science fiction. You can do a drama, you can do a buddy comedy movie, which is kind of what Project Hail Mary is. You can do anything, but then you also have the added fun, the added benefit of being, you know, fun science fiction. It's not grounded in reality. You have this beautiful setting, and people are comparing it to Interstellar and obviously The Martian, all that kind of stuff. E.T., that's true, but every movie that comes out is like, you know, every piece of art that comes out is a mixture of something that came before, right? Like, nobody produces art in a vacuum. But anyway, Andy Weir, man, like, I'm gonna defend Andy Weir just a little bit because you go on like the Reddit print Sci-fi and people are always bitching about Andy Weir, saying he's not very good at what he does. Is Andy Weir a good author? And I think the answer is he's great at what he does, you know, and that's the thing when you're talking about art and books and films and film criticism. Even a few of the reviews of Project Hail Mary, the film, you know, people are just, I think they're looking for something a little bit different than what the movie is or even what the book is. Because you talk about sci-fi, a lot of sci-fi is kind of serious and dystopian, very stark, very realistic, that kind of thing, very heavy, science heavy, and I like science fiction that's science heavy. If you want to watch a good film with heavy science in it, where they're just running around doing science, I recommend you watch the Andromeda Strain from like the 1970s.
It's bigger than 2 microns.
Which means the infection is spread by a mere fraction of the green.
It's pretty good. It's just scientists running around doing science, and I also read the book at some point after I saw the movie. I don't think the book's as good, man. Michael Crichton's got... But going back to Andy Weir, you know, he writes his books, the characters in his books. You're talking about Mark Whitney, I think is from Martian, and then this one, Ryland Grace. And even the Artemis book, which people don't like, it's like a horny teenage Muslim girl on the moon, saving the moon or whatever. But you just have to look at it from the perspective of, even she is basically just Andy Weir dressed up as like a horny teenage girl, you know. That's how I look at Andy Weir books when I'm reading Andy Weir books. And you can complain about that from the perspective of a book. Then when you end up making the film, you end up making The Martian, you end up making Project Hail Mary. That criticism, it doesn't really matter anymore, because what happens in a movie is you just cast Matt Damon or you cast Ryan Gosling in this, and you know, now whatever nerdy cringe humor, whatever criticism you have about Andy Weir just kind of writing himself into his books kind of fades away. I guess I'm not really a huge Ryan Gosling fan, but I think it's just the kind of thing where you talk about Hollywood films now, and maybe a lot of films just don't give actors anything to work with these days, because he's pretty good in that. This film, you know, he rides the line between like slapstick comedy and serious emotion, and that's what the movie becomes. It becomes this movie where the emotion just is running through it. So Andy Weir, you know, every book he's written so far, and this is why I was disappointed a little bit with this book originally. You have your main character and he gets put into this situation, like a Robinson Crusoe survivalist kind of a situation. And he's got to use science to figure his way or her way out of that. And that's kind of the basis for all three Andy Weir books. That's definitely what The Martian is. Focuses a lot more on the science aspect, the survival aspect of it, surviving on Mars, all these things. Project Hail Mary kind of, maybe a little bit wisely, kind of glosses over all of that. It's probably like half of the book. But you don't want it to feel too much like The Martian. Like when I read Project Hail Mary, it definitely felt a little bit too much like The Martian at the time. Looking back, I think introducing the extra element of his alien friend really does differentiate the book. But coming off of Artemis, which he attempted to do something a little different. You know, read a book about a female character and he got so much shit for that because, again, it just comes off like he doesn't know how to write female characters, and maybe Andy Weir doesn't know how to write female characters, you know? Really? But that's okay, you know? That's why you go back and you write the next one and you play to your strengths, and that's what being an artist is all about. You know, like, people always say, I want to experiment as an artist, I want to push myself in new directions, go forward into new ventures, think of new things, new ways of doing things. That's all great, but you do definitely also have to recognize your strengths and your weaknesses, you know? And I think Andy Weir, maybe it's because that second book wasn't as well received, but he went back and he recognized his strengths, and then he played to those strengths. And then, I'm not gonna say this is a bad book at all, you know, it's a very easy read. You go through, you read it. I think most people, it would appeal to them. I think the main criticism of this book probably comes from, and probably the film too, the the hardcore sci-fi community guys who like and read things like, I don't know if you guys have ever read like Alistair Reynolds, but you know, very hard, brutal sci-fi. A lot of people like to read that. They like to read science when it comes to science fiction. They like the science part. Whereas someone like me, it's not so important. You know, I just kind of treat a genre like science or fantasy or whatever as the backdrop, the potential fuel for the story about the characters you're telling, what they go through, and the emotional arc, you know. I love Star Trek. I think a lot of people love Star Trek, the old Star Treks, and you know, Star Trek isn't fucking scientifically accurate. They invented warp drives and crystals that power the engine and all kinds of bullshit. Positronic brain, they lift that right out of Asimov, but none of it really matters because it's not really about science.
You're gonna have some rules that you've come up with. You know, they might violate the actual rules of physics, but that's okay. Like, I have no problem watching Star Trek. They've got warp drive, you know, whatever. That's fine. You've come up with the rules of the universe that your story takes place in.
And that's what makes Andy Weir books good, is it's got science in it. The science isn't too heavy. The movie kind of dumbs it down even more. I know one scene in the movie, like he's in his classroom teaching kids and he asks like a girl what the speed of light is, and someone like, I'm just like in my head, well, it's 186,000 miles per second. Who doesn't know that? But then you think about the, you know, a lot of people they're not that into science. Maybe they don't know these science facts, or maybe they're not into science. So as far as the movie goes, I think it's the right choice to kind of just gloss over a lot of that. I kind of wish they did go into a little bit more detail, kind of cover that stuff a little bit more, like in the book. My wife read it recently, and you know, I had forgotten a lot of it, but there's this part where he makes hamburgers out himself. They're called me burgers. I think when he's waking up, the discovery of trying to figure out who he is and stuff, it's more like The Martian, I would say, a little bit, but that's okay because this movie kind of just creates its own identity, but really they're focusing on the emotional aspect of the Rocky character and Ryland and their dynamic, which is the heart and soul of the movie, and it's a lot of the heart and soul of the book. And going into it, I thought it was probably going to be pretty good. Like, it was probably going to be hard to mess up because the way Andy Weir writes the book, and especially this book, it already feels like it already has the beats of a movie, an escalating series of plots building towards a climax. It's an actual story. It's a page turner. You're not bored by it. You just kind of want to see what happens next because here's a problem. Oh, that gets solved. Here's another problem. Oh, that gets solved. Oh, here's this huge problem. Break it down into smaller problems. Does the movie capture that so much? Not really, but it's fine. And the cinematography's good. Greig Fraser. I think they said something like the directors are the guys who made the Lego movie. People like that movie. A little fun, a little silly, kind of the same thing. A lot of movies are like that these days. But one of the directors said something like there's no green screen in the movie. Plenty of visual effects. Probably almost every shot has some visual effects or some CGI in it. What he's trying to say is they went out and they built the set. Maybe they built models. I don't know. They're probably all digital, but they built the set so the backdrop isn't a green screen, there's an actual real set, and then you add the CGI actor to that or whatever, but you're starting with more of a base of reality than a lot of movies do these days, which are just shot in front of huge green screens because they don't know what they want the background to be, And it's a little easier to do that in a film like this because it's set on a spaceship. 2001 does that. Pretty much every space movie I think does. Alien, that's just one huge set. That's why that movie's so good. Now I'm going to talk about Alien at some point because, I love Alien. But it goes a long way towards putting the movie into a real space, and then it becomes reality, with the lighting and the sets, and these are things you don't really see as much these days in Hollywood productions. So a lot of films, what makes a lot of great films, you have your philosophy, you have your characters, your dialogue, your entertainment aspects, and then you have that emotional core. And a lot of times, what makes a great movie is that emotional core. I don't know, you've probably seen like the Shawshank Redemption. It's all kind of building towards that end, that emotional release. Project Hail Mary is a movie that doesn't really build. It does, but it's kind of got the emotion running through most of the movie. It kind of keeps it at a high level. I don't know if you've ever seen Uncut Gems, but that's a movie that just keeps like the tension up the whole time. But this movie, Project Hail Mary, it's more like it keeps good it's funny. I was laughing quite a bit, even though I knew all the lines of dialogue and shit from the book. They still managed to bring the comedy into the visual medium, so that was fun. But it's kind of like this relentless ride, except for maybe the first 20 minutes or so were a little bit slow. And we went and saw it in this theater. They got this weird thing now where they're projecting on the sidewalls. I forget what it's called, but I found that pretty fucking distracting. But anyway, starts off a little slow. Once you get to the heart of the movie, it kind of just glides along there. And this is one of those movies too where I think it's going to be kind of a test to see if it is going to pull big box office numbers. $250 million budget. It's probably got to make about $600 million before it even starts to turn a profit. These Hollywood guys with their big budget Hollywood movies. And it's just gonna be a test to see if you can actually get audience to go and see a movie like this anymore, because you talk about big budget sci-fi, not even sci-fi, just big budget like a Titanic or an Independence Day. There used to be movies that everybody would go see. They were like the tentpole movies before all these Marvel movies started coming out, and everybody really went and enjoyed them. E.T. obviously, they turn a profit. It was in the culture. Pretty much everybody liked them. And I don't know if we really have that going on anymore. You know, I don't know if people are gonna go see this movie. They probably should. I don't know what else is coming out this year, but as far as like a theater experience goes, I don't know. I don't know what else. I don't know what else is gonna be worth it this year. So I would definitely recommend going to see this movie. But I saw Ryan Gosling has a producer credit, so I assume he was into this book, maybe helped get it made.
Oh man, well, I mean, it's this book. You know, this book is special, and I knew it was special when I read it. I mean, obviously, I had like a real. I dedicated 5 years of my life to making it. I believe in this book. I believe in the Hail Mary.
And I think that helps when the actors and the directors and everybody involved in the project actually cares. You know, a lot of movies, I don't think a lot of people actually care. Gladiator 2, did anybody give a shit about that movie? Probably not. How many stars do I give this movie? You know? It's definitely like a 4-star movie, not a 5-star film. I'm gonna go ahead and give it 4.5 stars though. Just because making my own movies, you know, it gives me an appreciation of how hard it is to get everything working in a movie. And if this film doesn't have everything working like 100%, if it's not like a classic, instant classic film, it goes like 95% of the way there, you know, it gets most of the way there. And you have to really be like a heartless, hardened asshole without any kind of like softness inside of you and just complain about a movie like this. And the character of Ryland Grace has enough of a story arc, you know, you can't really complain about that. Even Rocky has his little story arc where he redeems whatever his issue is, you know, and it's not like world-shattering storytelling or anything, but it's enough to keep you invested and interested and keep you sitting up in your seat. You care about the characters, you care about what's happening. The score's pretty decent, you know, not overbearing, it just kind of fits right in there, and it brings out the emotions, because this is one of those emotional movies. As far as adaptations go, which are always hit and miss, I'd say this is pretty close to being like a flawless adaptation, which is as far as crowd pleasers and like a big movie that everybody kind of enjoys, you know, those old kind of movies that we used to get every year that we don't really get anymore. This is one of those films, and we'll see how it does. Hopefully it does like decent enough money that they keep actually making films, you know, and releasing them.
I was saying boo words.